During a press conference yesterday with Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, Donald suggested that displaced people, Palestinians in Gaza, be permanently resettled outside of the territory. And he proposed that the United States, quote unquote, take ownership of Gaza, turning it into a major redevelopment project, possibly with American troops. Watch this.
This morning, a stunning proposal from an American president, Donald Trump, with the Israeli prime minister by his side, declaring that the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and calling for the permanent resettlement of roughly 2 million Palestinians.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site.
And he says he's willing to use the U.S. military to do it.
We'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll do that. We're going to take over that piece, we're going to develop it, create thousands and thousands of jobs.
Benjamin Netanyahu seemingly on board with the plan.
I think it's something that could change history.
I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
But Trump provided no details on how he could do this or on what authority he could take over the sovereign territory. His proposal likely a violation of international law.
Likely. We're still doing this with the mitigating. Okay. It would change human history by starting World War III, probably. Look, it should not surprise us that both of those guys, who are mass murderers, would think this is a good idea. But, again, credit where credit is due. An illegal invasion and crimes against humanity. A twofer. Who says Donald can't multitask? All right. Before we get to the rest of this, please take a second to like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. And after you subscribe, click on the bell because that way you will be notified every time a new video drops. Thanks for listening to our podcast, which is now available everywhere. Follow us here and please give us a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. First of all, Donald cannot do this. This is against so many international laws. It's against so many U.S. laws, etc. But, what is the point of this? And I'm going to get to that later. But he is essentially in 16 days showing the American people, who really should have been paying attention before he got reelected, that he is not going to do anything he promised. Remember, he said that the Democrats were the warmongers, the Democrats who keep getting us into unnecessary wars, and he was going to keep us out of war. But now he basically wants to start a holy war. I mean, seriously, this is like the flippin' Crusades, except instead of fighting for Christ, you're fighting for oceanfront property. I'm going to bet you $10 that the Palestinian people will not benefit from that if Jared Kushner is the one doing the building of those condos. Of course, he's also attacking, threatening, I should say, Greenland and Panama and Canada. Thankfully, Donald's plan, thankfully, this should not surprise us, was immediately rejected by Middle Eastern allies like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. He was asked where he expected the Palestinians to go for 10 to 20 years. I mean, are they just supposed to wander around the desert like it's some apocryphal book of the Bible? Because he said it would take that long to rebuild the quote-unquote Riviera of the Middle East. Watch his response.
Well, I think Jordan and Egypt will, I know they've spoken about it with you, and they say they're not going to accept. I say they will. But I think other countries will accept also.
Yeah, I just have to love the smug smirk on Netanyahu's face. What a creep. Jordan's King Abdullah II, however, said the following in a statement published by Jordan State News. Quote, His Majesty the King stressed the need to stop Jewish settlement activities and reject any attempts to annex lands and displace Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, stressing the need to establish the Palestinians on their own land, unquote. CNN reports that in a recent phone call, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi firmly rejected any plans to expel Palestinians from Gaza. Because of course he would. Sisi emphasized the complexity of the crisis and stressed that any solution should uphold Palestinian sovereignty. Again, there's that pesky thing called international law. And Egypt shares a heavily fortified border with Gaza and has been actively working to prevent a large scale exodus of Palestinians. That was not all. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry put out a statement which reads, quote, Saudi Arabia rejects any attempts to displace the Palestinians from their land. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has affirmed the kingdom's position in a clear and explicit manner that does not allow for any interpretation under any circumstances, unquote. Look at that. Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman being on the right side of things and, not being totally cool with his, I was going to say best friend, but more like best pet, Jared Kushner, wants to do. The president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, was quoted as saying, We will not allow prejudice to the rights of our people, which we have struggled for many decades and made great sacrifices to achieve. Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of Great Britain, told Britain's House of Commons, Palestinians in Gaza, quote, must be allowed home. They must be allowed to rebuild, and we should be with them in that rebuild on the way to a two-state solution, unquote. Wow, remember that thing? That two-state solution? It almost sounds quaint at this point. We are so far away from ever being able to achieve that because of people like Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Not surprisingly, Hamas also had a response. Watch this.
نحن نرفض بشدة تصريحات الرئيس ترامب بخصوص ترحيل شعبنا الفلسطيني من قطاع غزة وبخصوص سيطرة أمريكا على قطاع غزة. هذه التصريحات تعكس تخبط وجهلا عميقا بفلسطين وبالمنطقة. غزة بالتأكيد ليست أرضا مشاعا وهي ليست عقارا يباع ويشترى. الانحياز الأمريكي لإسرائيل وضد شعبنا الفلسطيني وضد حقوقه العادلة يعني يستمر ويتأكد بمثل هذه التصريحات. نحن نطالب الرئيس الأمريكي بتراجع عن مثل هذه التصريحات لأن مثل هذه التصريحات تصب النار على الزيت. شعبنا الفلسطيني وقواه الحية وفصائله المقاومة مسنودا بأمته العربية والإسلامية سيفشل كل المخططات الهادفة إلى ترحيل الشعب الفلسطيني وإخراجه من أرضه.
Okay, look, that guy is associated with Hamas, so he's a monster too. Don't really like listening to him, but in this case, he happens to be right. Well, that's what happens when you have monsters on both sides. There has been some fallout on Capitol Hill, while Netanyahu expressed general support for Donald's idea, which, by the way, says a lot about him. Some on the Hill were not quite as supportive because, of course, they weren't. Because, again, illegal invasion, crimes against humanity. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Senator Chris Coons, who's a Democrat from Delaware, and a member of the Foreign Relations Committee responded, That's insane. I can't think of a place on earth that would welcome American troops less and where any positive outcome is less likely. That, Senator Coons, is probably because no such place on this planet exists. Except maybe Canada, Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia, who's also a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, said U.S. military presence in Gaza would be, quote, a magnet for trouble, unquote, and described the plan as deranged and nuts. Magnet for trouble is like pulling your punches a little bit, but deranged and nuts work. Quote, I don't know where this came from, but I can tell you that would not get many expressions of support from Democrats or Republicans up here. Kaine concluded. Texas Democratic Rep. Al Green has announced plans to bring articles of impeachment against Donald. Is that like a land speed record for impeachments? Cool. Here he was today on the House floor. Let's watch.
To whom it may concern, ethnic cleansing in Gaza is not a joke, especially when it emanates from the President of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, when he has the ability to perfect what he says. Ethnic cleansing in Gaza is no joke, and the Prime Minister of Israel should be ashamed, knowing the history of his people, to stand there and allow such things to be said. And I stand here today in the well to denounce what was said, to denounce what the President said, to denounce the complicity of the Prime Minister of Israel. I rise to announce that the movement to impeach the President has begun. I rise to announce that I will bring articles of impeachment against the President.
Yes, let's keep doing that. There are so many reasons to do so. And that's how Democrats need to be fighting, even if it's just for messaging, because that's important. I'm not entirely sure Donald is the most powerful person in the world anymore. And I'm pretty sure in the not too distant future, America will not be the most powerful country, but we have a ways to go yet. As mentioned, some Republicans are not supportive of this absolutely insane and destructive ploy. Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, posted a statement that said the following: I thought we voted for America first. We have no business contemplating yet another occupation to doom our treasure and spill our soldiers' blood. Jasmine Crockett earlier today was interviewed and spoke about how bizarre it is to agree with the egregious Rand Paul, but again, broken clocks, etc. And I think what's worse than agreeing with him is realizing how few Republicans will stand up. Donald, of course, has many more apologists than critics. He even has any critics, because, of course, this is probably the only issue Paul will come out against Donald for. John Thune told reporters, quote, he's just putting some ideas out there, unquote. Yeah, as if the so-called ideas of somebody who has the kind of power and platform Donald has won't have an impact on anything. You know, he's literally just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Jesus, fuck off. Freshman GOP Senator John Curtis said, I need to read it. I haven't followed it. Pro tip, this will save you a lot of time. Somebody asked you a question, and the question is, Donald Trump just said that he's going to invade Gaza and displace all Palestinian peoples so he can build oceanfront condos. What do you think? See how you don't have to read anything. Look at me go. Senator Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina, said, quote, there's probably a couple of kinks in that slinky. What? Okay, these people cannot be for real. He continued, unfortunately, obviously it's not going to happen. Is it obvious? I don't even know what circumstance it would make sense even for Israel, because there is no sense in which it would. But we are not living in sensical times, Senator Tillis. Of course, this should not surprise anybody at all. House Speaker and Donald's sycophant, Mike Johnson, is completely behind this grotesque and crazy proposal. Watch this.
Yeah, we're trying to get the details of it, but I think this is a good development. We have to back Israel 100%, and so whatever form that takes, we're interested in having that discussion. But it was a surprising development, but I think it's one that we'll applaud. So.
Would you support the presence of troops?
Yes, we'll applaud that because I have absolutely no sense of my own identity and I have no spine and I suck. Um, Nancy Grace, who is, I think, leading the race right now for the absolute worst member of Congress. She is also a member of the House Republican Israel Caucus, tweeted, "Let's turn Gaza into Mar-a-Lago." I would not wish that upon my worst enemy. All right, unfortunately, there was a press conference about this. And in the press room, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded that everyone would pretty much fall in line due to the amazing deal making skills of the idiot in the Oval Office. Here's a clip.
Also said that everyone loves this plan. He said that in the Oval Office this morning. Sure. In fact, the Deputy Prime Minister of Jordan called it a declaration of war on the Arab people. So how does he square the fact that even some Republicans on the Hill are objecting to this or questioning this? How does he square the fact saying everyone loves this plan?
Well, King Abdullah of Jordan will be here next week, so I can provide you more context on the conversations he will have directly with the President of the United States after that meeting. And I would just point out that there's been a lot of leaders and officials all around the world who have doubted, I suppose, the deal-making ability of President Trump. You heard the Panama leader saying that he would not agree to some of the concessions that he has now made because of Secretary Rubio's visit. You had the Colombian president saying he wouldn't accept flights of Colombian illegal nationals who have entered into our country illegally, and those flights are underway. So actions speak louder than words.
Okay. This is a guy who lost hundreds of millions of dollars owning casinos. So please, please take a step back. She went on to describe Donald because irony is dead as an outside the box thinker who is a visionary leader.
The president has spent basically his entire public career criticizing foreign entanglements, nation building, sending American troops to fight abroad, particularly in the Middle East. This plan seems like it could ultimately involve all of those things. Can you explain this reversal and how building and owning Gaza squares with America First foreign policy?
I would reject the premise of your question that this forces the United States to be entangled in conflicts abroad. The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. And let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region.
That's fascinating. I told her to take a step back, and then she took a step back. Wow. I think I need to figure out how to harness that power. The best way to get away with not answering a question is to reject the premise of the person's question. It was all not everything she said was nonsense. And to say like all Donald wants is peace for everybody and for everybody to be happy. Oh wow. This is the quality of the people basically funneling an endless stream of propaganda and disinformation to us. Alina Habba, remember her, says that Democrats should support spending taxpayer dollars to annex Gaza because that makes sense. Watch this clip.
Do you think that this is something that maybe the Democrats could agree to?
I think they should if they care about world peace. I think they should if they care about stop spending 70, however much money they're spending on DEI plays and operas in Colombia. We've seen $50 million to Gaza for condoms that they're using for bombs. We're seeing all kinds of spending being cut. So why not spend that money on protecting people in the world who have been persecuted and prosecuted, much like President Trump, who are going to be given a safe haven? And while they do, let's take that strip and let's make it great again. Let's make the world great again by making America great again. And that's what President Trump is doing.
Okay, she's so good at what she does. If I were Southern, I'd say, bless your heart. But I'm not, and I won't. Yes, let's make everybody, let's protect the Palestinian people by stealing their almost completely destroyed homes and exiling them, and then probably forgetting about them. Let's make the world a safer place by starting illegal invasions across the globe. Okay, so clearly, there are humanitarian concerns sparked by all of this. The Gaza remarks came as humanitarian aid and reconstruction efforts were just ramping up following over a year of intense conflict. The U.S. has been involved in ceasefire talks with both the U.S. and Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu, focusing on securing a lasting peace and hostages releases. Donald's development plan, so called, would certainly put a halt to all of that. Here's Richard Engel when asked what could possibly happen in the wake of an American quote unquote invasion.
What could the potential fallout of U.S. troops being in that part of the world, what would that fallout look like as well?
The U.S. would be entering into a guerrilla war because some Palestinians could be incentivized to leave, no doubt, that when they go back to their homes. And that is happening right now. Palestinians are moving from the southern parts of Gaza Strip to the north. They're finding very little left. They're seeing tremendous amounts of damage. So some Palestinians probably could be encouraged to leave. But many others would not. Hamas has already said it won't leave. Other factions would certainly emerge. So you'd have American troops occupying, potentially for a long term, one of the most problematic places in the entire Middle East. And for administration and for a president who said that he wants to get out of foreign wars, this would certainly be a very potentially violent entanglement.
I wish I could say with absolute certainty that none of this is going to happen, but there is not, with the exception of Rand Paul, there is not one Republican, not one elected Republican in either House of Congress that will do anything to stop him. So we'll have to see what happens, as Donald would say. Josh Rogan, a columnist for the Global Opinions section of the Washington Post, had this to say last night. Watch this clip.
I think to have the President of the United States advocating for ethnic cleansing is horrendous and unprecedented and deserves its own hearing. It also, to me, reveals a deep ignorance of the situation in the Middle East on the part of the President of the United States, because the plan that he articulated doesn't match any reality in the region. It has no chance of actually happening because none of the Arab states are going to take 2 million people, and they're not going to leave anyway, and there's no mechanism to actually get them out if they wanted to leave, which they don't. And so the whole idea is based in a fundamental misunderstanding of what's going on in the region. So we've sacrificed our moral authority as a nation for nothing, for no tangible benefit, and undermined the ceasefire and the peace deal that Trump says that he wants, undermining his own policy in the process. So it's really a triple lose-lose-lose scenario where Trump has undermined his own policy, he's undermined America's standing in the world, and he's tossed 2 million people into the abyss of an ethnic cleansing plan that we should all vocally stand against.
Yes, that's called a threefer. Again, whether this happens or not, the fact that he is floating this idea and the fact that every single Republican to a person isn't pushing back vehemently against it, is just another sign of how far we've fallen and how rapidly that fall has happened. The Washington Post helpfully published an article positing 4 possible reasons for Donald's sudden desire to take over Gaza and expel all Palestinians. Is it perhaps a distraction technique? Well, there are a lot of those happening, right? I don't necessarily think that's a motive of Donald's for any of what's happening right now. It's a negotiating ploy. Yeah, because you always start your negotiating position by saying you're going to do something that you cannot possibly do. That brings them to the table right quick. Knees trembling. Also, perhaps his sudden imperialist streak is very real. meaning, the whole let's take over Greenland and annex Canada as our 51st state and take the Panama Canal back, is just a prelude to more foreign adventures in which the United States does indeed become an imperialist nation. But I would challenge Donald to spell and define that word. He probably could not do either. And finally, it suggested that perhaps Donald is purposefully and consciously leaning into the so-called madman theory. During his first term, this is a quote from the Post, people often invoke the madman theory. The idea is basically to make other countries believe you're completely unpredictable and capable of anything to keep them in line. And Donald clearly sees the benefit of this. Sure, Jen. Sure he does. In an October, this is also from the Post, in an October interview with the Wall Street Journal editorial board, Donald responded thusly to a question about using military force to protect Taiwan from China and its president, Xi Jinping. He said, quote, "I wouldn't have to because he respects me and he knows I'm fucking crazy," Donald said of Xi. And Donald answered the question for us. Why is this happening? Because he's out of his fucking mind. That's why. So let's deal with that reality, okay? Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.